Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tidale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatruvyaschа Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My Dandavat Pranam devotees. So, this is a follow-up to a recently done video, which in part of that video, I think was the very last live session that I did, I kind of dealt with some of the problems with operating in modalities that are situated in the mode of goodness and the conflation of that with bhakti itself. Certainly a byproduct of the sadachar, means the behaviors and the qualities that come from the practice of bhakti, certainly produces sattva gun, or mode of goodness, as the prominent feature in a person's life when they've taken to the path of bhakti. But when we don't have a clear understanding of the separation between the material mode of goodness and the nature of transcendental goodness, or Suddha Sattva, sometimes the conflation of bhakti with the material mode of goodness arises. So, of course, I mentioned the other day that my reply was, I don't know if I mentioned directly it was a couple, but the question came from the wife. And when I replied to them on this forum, they wrote me back. She was appreciative. The husband also listened in. And then the husband also had questions as a result, and they wanted it to come back to this forum, and they wanted me to kind of exclusively deal with this issue. So rather than putting it in with other questions that I have, which I'll catch up to, I'm going to deal with the subject matter exclusively, but not in an elongated way. I'm just going to try to be as succinct as possible. So they didn't mind me using their story, but not their names. So it's a couple whom both have entered the process of bhakti fairly recently. I don't think it's been more than a year. They are not initiated, but they're aspiring to take initiation. And I don't know from whom. I didn't inquire like that. And the husband, he had a history of dealing with many other sort of pursuits within the material mode of goodness. Various seminars he had gone to. Some of them were practical type of seminars, like for Reiki or other kind of healing modalities, and a study of herbology and so forth and so on. But as they became more involved in bhakti, he also started to expand his interest in those kind of modalities, but not just in the practical modalities like that, but in those which dealt with the human psyche and with consciousness and other kinds of things. So I had never heard of this particular group. And I don't remember the acronym offhand, but it was something like, let me think for a minute, I'm trying to remember, I don't have it in front of me. It was something to do with pain and suffering, not physical pain and suffering, emotional pain and suffering. And anyway, the bottom line was the course offered an idea that by continuously, just like you take medicine, and this was the logic that he gave me, just like you take medicine on a regular basis to deal with a particular chronic illness, you need to take, and their idea in that particular grouping is that everybody has untreated psycho-emotional trauma, and some people are just admitting it and some people are not. That's the bottom line. And the treatment for that is the continual exposure of it in first a smaller group, then a larger group, and then finally in there, I think they work in intervals of 5, then to 10, then to 15 people. But what you do is you attend these workshops where everyone continuously exposes their emotional, psychological trauma, right? Whatever it might have been, right? Or what they may be currently going through. And the idea was that when you continuously expose it and you put it out in the open, it separates that trauma from yourself. And it creates an atmosphere where everybody feels that they can bring their trauma and place it in non-judgmental, trusting hands. And by doing that on a continuum, just on a weekly basis or whatever the time schedule is, that it keeps the trauma from being internalized. And therefore, it keeps the pain and suffering related to that trauma at bay. So that's the gist of what the program was, and it sounds really nice in theory. I've obviously not done it, but what I'm going to speak to is, related to the nature of how we even view psycho-emotional problems. But anyway, that was the theory that they had, that if you constantly expose your psycho-emotional trauma, past and current, it keeps it away from you, and it puts it into a collective, and purportedly the collective is composed of people who are non-judgmental and people who are trustworthy in that regard, I guess. And therefore, you can always feel comfortable. And they start with a smaller group and go up in increments of 5 until you're finally in a 15-person grouping where you do this on a continual basis. You do have to pay for it and so forth and so on, but I don't think money was an issue here. But she, the wife, was having some doubts about how that would be compatible with performing bhakti, and does not bhakti have adequate facility to deal with those things? Because, and she very nicely laid out a logic that if people are coming to bhakti from a conditioned life, wouldn't it be that if bhakti could deliver up to the point of self-realization and love of God, would it not be able to alleviate the accumulated pain and suffering that may be from the past or even current? So my immediate answer to her was, yes, it absolutely does, but you have to work in a partnership with your husband, so it's not just your understanding that will be sufficient to make your union work. You have to both sit down and kind of examine how the ideas of bhakti would be effective for both of you. Now, I explained to the husband once before in a private conversation that there is a difference between acute psycho-emotional issues that may even require up to professional help because it's creating physiological problems as well, right? There could actually be physical issues going on in terms of brain and other kinds of things, or particular kinds of psychological issues that are going on, such as bipolar or anything else, and it may rise to the level of being something that's acute. That is a completely different thing than an interest in the emotional nourishment that seems to come from group dynamics in the mode of material goodness. They're two different things. So the family, they live all the way out in like Wisconsin or something. So no, it's not Wisconsin, Wyoming. And there's not a lot of devotee association, so a prominent amount of the association, for one, has come via like social media and other kinds of things. They said at one time, and I didn't know what group it belonged to, but they said there was a group of some devotees, primarily from the Indian community, who were getting together, and but their introduction came when they were visiting California some years ago. They became involved, and then they moved to Wyoming. I guess the husband's parents, I believe, had property there, so they took advantage and moved back to Wyoming. So anyway, they don't have a lot of association, was the essential point. So he did find this group there, And he felt that it was being nourishing to dealing with issues that he's had. And she admitted that she's also had issues also from her childhood and other kinds of things. And they don't have any problem as a union. This is the amazing thing. It's not that their marriage has any difficulty. It's their individual states of issues that are at hand, right? Because as a union, they function well together, and they're just trying to work together as a unit to see the best means for dealing with their own personal history of issues and trauma and emotional duress and so forth. So, let me get to the point. The point that I made to him was that there is a difference between the material mode of goodness and the transcendental nature of what comes from the practice of bhakti. One is applicable to the mind and to the body. One is applicable to the soul. So now you have to first ask the question, am I the body or am I the soul? So when I mentioned it to him, at first he said, yeah, but we do have a body, and we have to deal with that fact that we are partly physical. And I said, certainly, I'm not at all denying that. So my question was more, in reality, what is the source of our consciousness, and hence, what is the source of how we view suffering, trauma, pain, emotional duress? We have to acknowledge there's a source, and then from that source, we can start looking at things, because you can't, if you wanted to solve even a medical problem, a health problem, which is partly the problem with contemporary Western medicine, there are so many things in the atmosphere and in our food and everything else that causes diseases that they didn't go back and do research to find something to cure, to cure those diseases. Right? The very nature of the food and air and water and everything else is filled with, all kinds of carcinogens and all kinds of things. And then the idea is they'll go and do research and development on creating medicines that stave off the symptoms of it. It doesn't really cure it, because the root cause is the nature of the contamination in the things that we eat, drink, etc. You understand? But rather than to deal with the root of the issue, they deal with the symptoms. So I mentioned to him it's the same thing, that when you deal with any modality that is in the mode of goodness, it is symptom alleviation. It doesn't deal with the root problem. So you have to first find the root, and then you can make a true assessment of what's happening. So when I couched it like that, he then said, oh yeah, well I fully agree. That's why we're practicing bhakti. We want to understand self-realization in the soul. But then he again said, but I'm trying to get to the point where I can practice nicely by dealing with some of the emotional traumas I went through. So apparently some of his traumas, he didn't go into detail, related to his upbringing with his parents, right? The parents were a husband and wife. They didn't divorce or anything, but I guess the household atmosphere was somewhat traumatic, and he revealed that and didn't mind me speaking about it, right? But I mentioned to him, whatever the source of that psycho-emotional trauma might be, still, we'd have to add the variable of the root of who we are in order to have the most complete perspective on how to deal with it. Do I want to deal with it, and I reiterate it, from the point of view of symptom relief, or do I want to deal with the issue as a whole and uproot that disease which has come from part of my karmic portfolio? So then I had to get into the fact that each of us carries a karmic portfolio. Whatever we have done in previous lives, and even the things we've done in this life, they shape a certain kind of karmic package for us. And pretty much any kind of trauma, distress, emotional duress, anything that we go through, we tend not to speak about it being a problem when we face the positive sides of our karma. When things are going well, that's not an issue. But when we face the negative sides of the karma, that's when we have to have these kind of discussions, right? So I mentioned to him that that karmic package is the effect of obviously something that was done even in previous lives. So it was not a trauma that was instituted simply in your familial dealings in this life. Even the family you're born to is generated by karma. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it mentions karmana daivana trena janta devapatye. That what family we end up being aligned with is a combination of our material karmic package, and if we've practiced bhakti in any previous life, the bhakti sanskars also are present there. So the combination of two kinds of impressions, bhakti impressions if we have them, and also certainly our material activities from the previous life. So I was saying in that regard, the real root of your problem was not in just this lifetime, in this karmic iteration, but it stems from previous carryovers of your own karma that had nothing to do with this particular family. And so I brought that up to show him that generally the way we perceive problems, the way we perceive suffering or pain or duress, the pain part is resultant. The real thing is our perception, that we perceive the emotional stress or duress, and the result of that is pain. You understand? Or suffering. So if we change the perception, we have a very good chance of changing the response to the perception. So if you perceive that, yes, I am this body, I am this mind, I am this one particular karmic iteration, and you base your worldview on that, then certainly, most definitely, you have to take what comes along with it. And there's no way to eradicate that, but you can spin like in cyclic fashion, going from one modality to another to do symptom relief. If you have a very bad headache, somebody will take some kind of NSAID, like Aleve or any of those sort of things, or somebody else will try another one. Like that didn't work, they want to take prescription medication. So, and one of the problems with this is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, just like when you begin to take medicines to relieve certain kinds of symptoms physically, then sometimes you need to take more, then more powerful ones, then more powerful ones, and before you know it, you have an addiction problem to whatever that pain medication is. So on a subtle level, the same thing happens. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat, right? Prakasham anumayam. This is in Bhagavad Gita, I think in the 13th chapter, discussing the modes of nature. The third line of this verse says, Sukha sangena bhadati, jnana sangena anangaha. So it's saying here that the mode of goodness, nirmalatvat, means it is more pure than the modes of passion and ignorance. And therefore it is better situated in that regard. That's why we try to live sattvic lives, right? Nobody is saying that we shouldn't try to do that, right? We try to eat sattvic foods, try to live sattvic lifestyle, try to do everything regarding our physical and our mental arrangements in the material world in the mode of goodness as much as possible. But when it comes to looking for a solution to the overall problem of material existence, things in the mode of material goodness will be symptom relief. Because this verse is saying, Sukha sangena bhadati, the addictive principle of the material perception of happiness coming from the social dynamic of being relieved of the immediate duress or pain for that period of time until next week, till next Saturday, or next month if it's a monthly thing, right? That symptom relief is temporary, but it's addictive. And the other thing that happens is jnana sangena. In the same way, we start to associate the information content that comes from those modalities with real knowledge, because we're getting some immediate benefit, some immediate reciprocation from it. We take it that the knowledge derived from there has an equal power, or a power which can be looked at in the same light as Dibya Gyan or transcendental knowledge. And this is where the mode of goodness becomes problematic. Sukha sangena bhadati, jnana sangena cha. Understand? Because it creates a situation in which we associate the information derived from these things as being truly powerful knowledge. Why? Because it's making me happy by following that course of action. So because I'm happy, and this happiness is not coming from the Atma or coming from the soul. It's actually coming from the subtle body, the mind and the intelligence. But what happens is, because of that aspect of our self-interest being fulfilled, it becomes more difficult to do Saranagati, which is the doorway to bhakti. Because Saranagati means I've taken my everything and I've placed it at the feet of Hari Guru and Vaishnav, that because my desire is for your seva, that all of the prerequisites I would need, the elimination of any problems that would obfuscate that, I've now laid at your feet. And therefore, I will do everything which is anukulyasya sankalp. I'm taking a vow to do that which is only favorable to acquiring your service. Pratikulyasya vivarjanam. Anything which would obfuscate that, then I will not accept that as something favorable to bhakti. We have to also make a distinction that something may not be favorable to bhakti, but it doesn't mean it's all negative. You understand? It's not that there's a condemnation of everything simply because it's not favorable to bhakti. It has a perspective. You understand? It's just not optimally favorable to bhakti. So we agree, Pratikulyasya vivarjanam. I will not take that path which is not favorable to bhakti. What does that really entail? Well, it means Rakshishiti Vishwas. So this word Rakshishiti, Raksha means to give protection, to give nourishment, to give security. To give me the security, I will take Vishwas, means a full kinds of trust. I mentioned the other day, in this word Vishwas is the word swash. Swash in Sanskrit also means to breathe. So the same trust I put that I will take my next breath. You understand? It's not guaranteed. But we have a trust, a faith. I will take my next breath. We should put that same faith in Bhagavan as being the Raksha, or the protection and nourisher in my life to handle any and everything which would be problematic in me obtaining the ultimate goal of life, which is prem or love of God. Goptrave varanam tata. And not only will the protection come, right, but also he will maintain that status. That Bhagavan, Hari Guru and Vaishnav, they will maintain that status. So I don't have to fear that I have to again recommit next week, and then recommit next week, and then recommit next week. I need to make that commitment at the time of entering bhakti, or if I see I have not made that commitment, I have to pay attention to being in the position that, yes, my prime goal is to make this commitment. The commitment to doing Saranagati. Anukulyasya sankalpa, Pratikulyasya vivarjanam, Rakshishiti vishwas, Goptame varanam tata, and in doing so, Atmanikshep kalpanya, to take a position of great humility. Because humility is something that opens the portal that allows the efficacy of the practice of bhakti to come through. We have to be vulnerable. And this is one of the problems in transitioning from conditional life to spiritual life. In our conditional life, we have that major armament called false ego, or ahamkara. What is ahamkara? Aham, I, karana and karta. I am the doer and the cause of everything in my life. Is that true or not is the question. But that's what ahamkara is. I am the cause and the doer of everything related to me. So I will make it out. I will make it happen. I will work out any issues. I will decide how things fit my life. So this obviously is not anukul to the idea of surrendering to the descent of divine revelation and knowledge, which will actually give you the methodology by which you can obtain not only freedom from anything within the material paradigm, but actually reveal to you the divine or the spiritual paradigm. But I can't do that if I allow ahamkar to keep prominence. Now Krishna's warned in Bhagavad Gita, Prakriti kiya manani gunai kamani savasha ahamkara vimuratma kartahamiti vanyate. That we're thinking we're the doer. It's not real. We're thinking this. But actually everything that's happening is being carried out by the modes of nature. You understand? So in this particular case that we're talking about, where we've made an attempt not to be dominated by the mode of ignorance or passion, still the mode of material goodness then takes over and becomes addictive and binds us to ahamkara and the material paradigm. So when we do Saranagati, that Saranagati is purchased not with external currency, not even cryptocurrency, right? It is purchased with the currency of Shraddha, or faith. So it means I can take what faith I have. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has glorified the nature of, another word for faith is free will, actually, right? I've given some classes before to describe, free will is actually one of the ingredients in love of God. It does not mean the same thing as the Sanskrit word swatantrita, which means independence, because we're not independent, right? Free will is like a proposition that I can take my faith, as long as I'm in conditioned life, and I can apply it to try to become unconditioned. Because I can't do that via my material facility like ahamkar. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, it's clearly mentioned, Swato na sambhavanti. Anarya vidya yuktasha purushasha vedatmanam. Swato na sambhavanti. Swato na means by myself, I cannot extricate myself from material conditioning. Anya requires another person. Gyanatva, Ganadovave. Somebody who has transcendental knowledge. Gyanatva means who has transcendental knowledge. And by that descent through that person means Guru, Sadhu, Parampara, back to Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Yuga. By that descent of transcendental revelation, I can be freed from material conditioning. Understand? So reposing my faith in that proposition is called Shraddha. And that's the doorway to Bhakti also, Ado Shraddha. And then meeting a sadhu, reposing the faith in full. Empty the account. I'm putting it all here. I'm making the investment at the lotus feet of the sadhu. Guru Pad Asraya. This is the very first step in bhakti. Guru Pad Asraya. Putting the faith in the sadhu. That whatever was there in my conditioned life that was unsuitable to me obtaining the goal of love of God, which will resolve all problems on a permanent basis, right? I'm putting all my faith that this is the way that I will go about doing that. Reposing all my faith at the lotus feet of the sadhu, Shri Guru. Understand? Now, we have to only make sure, in that case, we actually have Sadguru. Right? I don't mean to laugh at that because many people, their trauma has come because they've not had relationship with Sadguru. You understand? I'm not making, people make sometimes joke that, no, there was a sad guru, but I don't think it's an appropriate joke because it's a very serious topic. That actually, we want to find that person who is situated in transcendence. Right? There are three categories of people who can become guru. Those who are Nitya Siddha, who descend to this world. Those who become Siddha through the practice of sadhana. And those who are firmly situated, according to Rupa Goswami, in the practice of sadhana. Shastra Yukti Suni Punya, Ajurashwara Yandra, Uttamarikari Se, Tariye Sangsar. They have become Uttamarikar in eligibility in the practice of sadhana, and therefore they have the ability to help others to cross the path of samsara. So these are three persons who can perform the function of guru. Guru is a function, it's not the person. The person has to develop sadhutva, means they should become sadhu. The function of guru means the dissemination of divya gyan, or transcendental knowledge. And by that, removing the darkness of avidya. Right? Literally, the translation of the word guru is gu shabdat andakarasha, ru shabdat andakarasha nirodhita. It means to remove darkness. So that's not a person, that's a function. And part of the problem is, some people assess it is a sort of designation for me, and therefore I am guru. And what happens is that the ahamkar latches onto that very quickly, and it becomes guru abhiman. I am guru, I am doing guru. You understand? And that person is not Satguru. Right? Because the tendency to enjoy is already there in the self-conception, I am Guru. You understand? That's why you never see in a Guru Parampara anyone is declared to be Guru. Bhaktivinoda Thakur told, Thai Sisha Tava Takya Savara Guru Abhimana Tyaji. Let me always see that I'm only the Sisha of my Guru Dev and our Guru Parampara. May Guru Abhiman Tyaji means to go very far away. Because Guru Abhiman will obstruct the ability to taste bhakti. Therefore, many stalwart associates of Mahaprabhu and in our Guru Parampara never wanted to take any disciples. Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, he had to ask Pujapat Srila Gorkashalas Babaji Maharaj many times. Narottam Das Thakur had to ask Lokanath Goswami many times. Because it is not in the interest and not in the heart space of those who are practicing bhajan seriously and getting any kind of taste from bhajan that they want to take disciples. They don't mind creating loving relationship. That is different. When Lokanath Goswami saw the mood and the heart of Narottam Das Thakur, his own heart melted and they fell in spiritual love. He didn't acquire disciples. They fell into spiritual love. This is Guru-disciple relationship. It's not a social dynamic of some kind of hierarchical designation. I'm always going to be lowly. This is my Guru. Because in Rupa Goswami's teachings, he says, Guru Parasraya Tata Diksha Shikshari Vishrambena Guru Seva. Surrender to the Guru. You take Diksha, receive Siksha in that Diksha. What you received in Diksha, Siksha should follow to illuminate it. And then Vishrambena Guru Seva. The word Vishramba means with loving heart intimacy. The Guru is everything for me. Very dear to me. The Guru is not a statue on the Vyasasan. You understand? Or not a living form on the Vyasasan. The Guru is my heart. Patyakya Esham Gurudeva Tatma. Says Guru is close to me than my heart. This is love. In fact, it is the only experience of actual love that we'll have in this material world. Every other form of love in this material world is tenuous at best. Because for the most part, it's either exploitive grossly or subtly, because we're conditioned souls, so the love can't be unconditioned. Now, for those who are devotees, Rupa Goswami is told what their dealings are is Priti Lakshan. It is covered with the Lakshan of Priti, real love, because Krishna is the center. So we should not think that devotee husband and wife, devotee friends, devotee parents and children, that there's no love there. It is covered with the Lakshan of Priti, proportionate to how much Krishna is the center. Understand? So my point to Prabhuji was that at a certain point, you'll have to see that everything you need to deal with everything that's part of your journey to the ultimate goal of life, which is love of God, is present in the practice of bhakti itself. And so you don't want to divest any of your shraddha, any of your currency of faith, and place it in another domain. If you are studying astrology, if you are studying Ayurveda, if you are studying martial arts, if you are studying any pragmatic function, there is no harm in that whatsoever. Because it doesn't require you to divest from the faith in bhakti in order to get the efficacy from that practice. Those are simple sciences. It doesn't require divestment of faith to get efficacy from that. They are not things which you depend on to enhance bhakti or to become eligible to practice bhakti. If you're studying Ayurvedic science or astrological science, whatever other modality you may be studying, but when you get into things that purport to deal with the psycho-emotional, conscious aspect of your existence, you want to be very guarded. Because you want all of the currency related to that aspect of your existence to be deposited in the arena of bhakti. Because if you don't, what you by default do, maybe unconsciously do, is say that even though Mahaprabhu is told, Nam Nam Akri Bahuda Nija Sarva Shakti, that I place all of this is God, I place all of my power in the name, the very name that you're chanting as your process. I've placed all my power there. Is there a power superior to that someplace? And what will happen is there will immediately become a sort of confusion of heart. Because even when you hear such a thing, you have to acknowledge, yeah, that's a fact. Then why am I going to these personalities and they want to teach me something which they say will alleviate my pain and trauma, but God told that I put all power in this name, but the name would be incapable of accomplishing that task? So I'm taking a pregnant pause here. Because if we really want to practice bhakti, and we really need to understand what is Shraddha, what is faith, and what is the efficacy of the placement of faith in the arena of bhakti. Bhakti is not an additive to material conditioning. That is called Misra Bhakti. You understand? If you add it to one of the various upadhis, means designations you have in this life. I am a husband, I am a father, I am in this career field, I'm in this social status of life, and my religion is Hare Krishna. You understand? Pure bhakti will be very difficult in very many lives to obtain. I have to think from the actual perspective of I am the soul. The soul is the das of Krishna. That is the paradigm from which I'm operating, and my worldview is shaped by that. How I deal with the world is based on that. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told to Raghunath Das Goswami, Antara Nishtakara Baya Lokya Vavyahara. In your inner Hridoya Mandir, the temple of your heart, you should always be absorbed in meditation there, and in your external life, right? How much love is radiating from the Hridoya Mandir? From your service to Hari Guru and Vaishnava? Will that not translate into being a father, a husband, a friend? Will it not translate into being expertise in your career field? We just somehow or another don't fully trust or have faith. It could be that we've seen a corrupted practice of bhakti, and that may have shaken our faith. But then the answer is to then find a pure practice of bhakti someplace. Find the pure thing. Have experience of the pure thing. Right? And for those who had the opportunity to see many high-class Vaishnavas, but certainly if you had the association or darshan of Srila Prabhupada, right, you had the experience in this life of what it means to see pure devotion. My own prospect is that many, both in ISKCON and other sanghas afterwards, there are pure devotees. So we should not think that we have not seen any other pure devotees except Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev. Right? There are pure devotees, always. If there were no pure devotees on the planet, this planet could not exist. Because the very nature of this planet is based on Bhagavan's maintenance of it. And Bhagavan cannot exist if there's no element of pure devotion with which he reciprocates. You understand? Very important thing to understand. The real existence of this material world is going on also by the mercy of devotees being on this planet. Vyasadeva saw this. When he wrote the third verse, it's called the Faustuti verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, he wrote, this is the verse, Nigama Kalpa, what is this verse? Nigama Kalpa Toro Galitam Phalam. This verse. Nigama Kalpa Galitam Toro Galitam Phalam Sukhamukad Amrita Dravya Samhitam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasaya Malayam. But the last line he says, Aho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavokaha. In Sanskrit, Aho is like an exclamation. How amazing it is. Rasika Bhuvi Bhavokaha. Those Rasik Bhavuk Vaishnavas are roaming the earth. That was the astonishment. So his ashibad, his blessing was that you will meet one of these kind of Vaishnavas. That was his blessing. Because it's a Faustuti, it means it's a benedictory verse, right? To give a blessing to those who are reading Srimad Bhagavatam. The blessing was you will meet any Rasik Bhavuk Vaishnava. Huvi, they're roaming this earth. If they were not here, Bhagavan would not maintain this creation. So, my point here being, both for Prabhu and your good wife, because it was at your request that I'm doing this, that you have a good union. So, sit and take a look at the things that I've presented. They're not coming from me. I'm also just gleaning them from what has come from Guru Parampara, Guru, Sadhu and Sastra. I'm simply repeating that, right? But I'm couching it in a way of also having been somebody who's experienced it. I'm married, I have a wonderful wife, I have children, you understand? Well, I'm saying children in the plural now because I have grandchildren, right? I'm old, right? So, but all of those things are there. I've had a career, 2 careers, you understand? So all of those vyavaharic things are there. But I've always maintained that there is nowhere else for me to place my investment of faith than in this path. Understand? And don't think that the path does not reciprocate. That's why Rupa Goswami told in Upadeshamritam, Nectar of Instruction, Utsahan Nischayat Dharyat, 3 things. Don't give up the enthusiasm of the investment. Utsahan Nischayat, have determination. It's going to happen. But don't think, well, yeah, they're saying that, but I've been chanting for 10 years, I've been trying to practice for 10 years, and I don't know. Because Daryat means patience. But actually, we shouldn't have patience blindly, like we shouldn't have faith blindly. If you're not getting reciprocation from your bhajan practice, go to Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru if he's still present, and ask, oh Gurudev, I am not feeling reciprocation. Can you help me to rectify, adjust, so that this can happen? Because if it's happened for your Gurudev, that means it can happen. So please, Gurudev, tell me how is it I should adjust my bhajan in order to make the efficacy of that bhajan come out. Now, if the person just says go on and chant more, that's really not an answer. It is an answer, but it's not illumination on the answer. You need to understand what is bhajan. You understand? Part of the issue in some cases, I believe, is not always why people go to different modalities is because they lack practice in bhakti. They lack experiencing the efficacy of the practice. And part of that has come because they're not quite sure what it is they're doing. But we take it for granted. I've been doing it 10 years. I know every song from the Guru Ashtakam through Guru Puja, Tulsi Parikram. I know all the songs, everything. I know how to do puja, how to set up the altar and the art teacher. I know how to make an offering to the deities. I listen to Bhagavatam classes. But how to do bhajan is different from those things. You understand? Those are the elements of bhajan life. How to do those, that's the key. How to do them. And you have to go wherever you can and sit and humbly inquire, how do I get the efficacy of this practice? And once you experience anything of the efficacy of this practice, then it will be completely clear to you, oh, there's no need for anything else. Also, don't project that into the entire world. You understand? In other words, I'm speaking to people who've taken the practice of bhakti. If somebody has come with no bhakti samskars, maybe, coming up through investigation to get to the path of bhakti or spiritual life, they very well may run across one of these modalities and it may be helpful. Because for them it is a progressive march. For those practicing bhakti, it is regressive to some degree. Because it is divesting some of your faith and is not allowing you to see the actual potency within the practice of bhakti itself. You understand? I think I will end here, and for Prabhu and Didi in Wyoming, because there's many Prabhus and Didis here. Again, just as you wrote me again to do more elucidation, I hope this was helpful because I didn't deal with any other subject matter, only your question, right? But you can always write to me again and again. I don't mind, and we can discuss more and more and more. And Prabhuji, especially because, you know, to some degree it revolves around your interest in the other practice. And I thank you for, I couldn't remember the name of the group you spoke about, so forth, so on. But I think I did paraphrase relatively accurately what you told me is their logic and their understanding and so forth. And you also mentioned that they were not, what is it, God adverse. I had never heard that before, right? But I guess it's probably something that's going to come into the lexicon, that people are not God adverse, right? Which means they don't have a particular leaning towards God, but they're not adverse to people who do, right? So I never heard that before. So I don't really fully digest what status that is. But anyway, I tried to adequately represent what it is you told me. But the point here being, try to give a listen to what I spoke. And as I mentioned, it's not my own. I'm only repeating what is in Guru Sadhu and Sastra and trying to elucidate it from whatever experiences I've had. And try to ask those questions, that if my ultimate goal is realization of the soul, isn't it inclusive in the process itself that it would accommodate both things? Because if I have a $100 bill, everything which comes in $10 issues, $20 issues is covered. Right? That's another way to give an analogy of the outline of what I'm speaking here. All right, my Dandavat Pranam also to devotees who came on, and I see many mature devotees came on, so please feel free to comment in a general way, because the couple, they are practicing bhakti, and this is just something they wanted out in the general discussion. And I'm sure if it was something very private or personal, they would not have, availed themselves, first of all, to saying, yes, speak it out in public so we can hear it. Because I think part of how they ended up was that they saw some other question and answer sessions or something that was done on this forum, and that's how they reached out to me, right? But there are many senior devotees who I've seen come on even here now, and I believe they could adequately give commentary to also make points that would be helpful. All right. My Dandavat Pranam, Vancha Kalpaturubhischa, Kripasinabhevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.